Hello there. I've got a mixture of things that are making a video this week a little difficult. I've got some bigger projects going on in the background that aren't ready yet, something that I'm currently working on that needs a bit more research, and outside of my office is a bunch of construction that makes it sound like a 90s industrial song is going on. So I can't really record anything great this week. So I thought I might do a kind of evergreen video here that will just be something I can point to and reference in the future, where I talk about what tools I use, specifically the ones that I really like and would recommend in general. So everything that I can for this video, I'm going to link in the description if you see something that you want to find out more about or get. Amazon and eBay links will be affiliate if there are those. Everything else won't be. So yeah, so today I'm going to go over the majority of the tools that I use to work on vintage computers and electronics and just tell you what I think about them. All right, now over here, I want to just give a brief honorable mention to test equipment that I'm not going to get into today. I use an HP 34401A, 16500C, 6632A, 6633A, and down here is a 6640, I want to say. I'll correct that somewhere. GPIB HP test equipment, and there's reasons that I picked all of these, and I will go into this more in depth in a video dedicated to this. I'm just still setting everything up, which is kind of a big pain, but yeah, I'll go into that more later. For now, I want to focus on smaller tools. Now, to start us off here, I want to talk about soldering equipment. So I want to go over some of the different tools I use for that here. Now, I've already done a video in the past about my actual soldering base station, which is a Metcal MX500, where I went through and attempted a repair on it, and it actually ended up working just fine. But I wanted to talk about it in a little bit different way here, because there are some things that I think are worth knowing. So first off, the Metcal system is kind of weird. It's not on, and it uses tips that go into the handpiece, and these tips are individually temperature calibrated, so you don't actually change the temperature on the base station. You buy a tip that is calibrated to the temperature you want, and the idea is once it stops reaching that temp, you chuck it. So that is how this system works. And it ends up being kind of nice because you can get different kinds of tips. Here are 3 different kinds of tips. We have a wide chisel tip, we have a fine chisel tip, and then a different kind of fine chisel tip that's a little stouter and wider. Now, before we get to the really cool thing here, something I want to mention is Thermaltronics. Now, Metcal's system here is very old, and this is an actual Metcal handset, but this is a Thermaltronics handset, and these two are completely compatible and interchangeable. The patents for Metcal's designs have expired, and a company called Thermaltronics is producing compatible components. So you can get base stations, hand pieces, and pretty much anything else, tips, accessories that are made by Thermaltronics for your Metcal stuff. So you can get Thermaltronic stuff that is newer and cheaper sometimes instead of official Metcal things, and they generally work just as well. In this instance, depending on your preference, you might actually prefer the Thermaltronics handpiece because it's actually slightly narrower. I can't remember if the tip depth is the same. So these are 2 of the exact same tip, and it looks like the Thermaltronics pokes out just a little bit more there, but not really that much. So that is something to know about. I actually leave the Thermaltronics handset at home in case I need to do soldering work, and I do it with a pointed tip because I don't really like a pointed tip, but I really don't have a preference between the two. So there's something to know about. All right, now this is very new to me and unbelievably cool. This is a Metcal MX SD1, if I remember correctly here. This is a vacuum desoldering gun, and oh my, is it just the best. So I should actually get it powered up here, but in order to do that, I gotta plug in an air compressor, which kind of sucks in an office, so give me one moment. To all my office neighbors, this is totally the construction outside. Yeah, for sure. All right, hopefully that's enough. Now, I got this somewhat recently and have still been playing around with it. I want to order all of the bits to completely refurbish it, but in just a short amount of time I've owned this, it has immediately become one of my favorite tools because of just how great it is. So if you're not familiar with what this is a desoldering iron. That means it's a soldering iron tip, has a hole in it that can pull air through. Now, this handpiece does this by using a Venturi valve, which is located under this air filter. It is that brass fitting piece that you can just barely see down in there. You can actually take that out to service it. And what it does is it pushes air through here and it shoots all the air down, creating a vacuum pressure with the positive air that then pulls air through here. And it works unbelievably well. So here is an ATX power supply motherboard, and I just want to go ahead and remove that capacitor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tip over the leg, press it down, and there we go. That leg is free. Do the other side. And there we are. The cap is removed. Now let me do that again up close so you can see just how ridiculously easy this is to operate. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that cap right there, which looks like it has legs through there. So all I'm gonna do is put this over the tip of the leg. It melts the solder, pull it out, go to the other side, which I believe is right here. And it's a little crowded in there, but there we are. And then flip it over and pull that cap right out. And there we are. That is how ridiculously easy that thing is to use. Right here is my Metcal base station where both the desoldering iron and my regular soldering iron are plugged into, and I can just flip this switch to go between the two of them. I don't have a tip in the iron right now, so it's complaining about that. If I put one in and switch it back, I'll turn it off and on again. Now I can switch between the two, no problems. But the single base station can use both hand pieces, not quite simultaneously, but pretty conveniently. Servicing this thing is super easy. You pull the whole top forward and then it slides over. You have this little paper tray that collects all of the blobs of solder, and you can unfold that to clean them all out. Then you have the filter right here. This prevents solder fumes from getting out, well, the flux fumes, from getting out into the area, and any little tiny microscopic bits of solder all get stuck on that. And you can get replacement components for everything there. I did have to clean this rubber gasket around the whole mechanism there. That fixed this. Working. I actually bought this as kind of untested, non-working. It didn't work that great when I got it. Just cleaning that rubber gasket there by removing it totally worked. I don't know if you can get that separately, but you might be able to. Tektronix does make one of these as well, so you could get that. But used for the OG Metcal, I only paid $100. A really good deal if you already have a Metcal base station and access to an air compressor. On that air compressor though, I'm just using a really cheap 1 gallon pancake air compressor, and it's really, really loud for an office especially. So I'm probably going to be getting one of those silent, like 2 gallon ones that are only supposed to be like 60 decibels or something. I don't have that yet, but that is what I'm thinking to use for this. Maybe one by like California Air Tools or something that's more indoor usage than outdoor, you know, power air tools for like working on a car. I don't know, haven't figured that out yet, but absolutely worth it. This thing is phenomenal. Continuing with the soldering theme here, when I'm using my soldering iron, I clean my tip, but I don't always use this wet sponge system. I use this, and I get questions about this because it's actually really nice for what it is. Now, some of these Metcal stands, which you can also get a stand for this, I don't have that unfortunately right now, will include a brass wool holder here. Mine doesn't. So what I'm using instead is a votive candle holder that is just made out of glass, very, very heavy, and it doesn't really move around when I'm trying to clean my tip. So I really like that. Look into votive candle holders if you're trying to set up a brass wool cleaning thing, I can just pick this out and replace the wool if I need to. I haven't actually, probably should. Oh, I've never looked in there. There's a lot of solder in there. Maybe it is time to replace that. But this works out super well for that. Another thing I use is this. This is just a silicone cooking mat. I get questions about this because it's weird, but I use that because it's temperature proof. You can do soldering stuff on it and it does not burn. Unlike my table, this is my brand new workbench that I built and it's already starting to get some burn scars, so that's just gonna happen. But I do try and avoid that when I can, and one of these is a good way of doing that. Another thing with solder are consumables. So this is some 6644 leaded solder, and then this is probably 6040 here. Yeah, leaded solder. I recommend having two different kinds of the same solder, one that's nicer, maybe it's a finer type, and then a bulk garbage solder. And the bulk garbage solder can be really useful for removing stuff if you have lead-free solder that is not flowing very well. Flood this stuff in and you'll get it moving a lot more. Some other things related to these, though, I think would be really good to have is Kapton tape, or polyamide tape if you want to use the non-DuPont brand name. Keep this in mind as a consumable item. You can put this somewhere where you don't want solder to go as a solder mask, and it works really well. And similar to this, sheets of Teflon. I used that in the video where I repaired my Roland SK88. Teflon will help you direct hot air away from when you're working on something. Now, I'm not actually going to cover what hot air station I'm using in this. It's the, 858D one. It's the super painfully generic one that everyone uses. I would rate it as okay. I'm not going to recommend it or link it below. It's just, that's what I bought. I usually try to buy something that's really cheap that gets the job done, and then I try to step up to something that's like top of the line once I've decided I like it. So that's how I usually like to roll. This is just my cheap entry-level one that I'm using right now. On that though, the powered desoldering iron isn't always for everyone or every use case. So I would like to mention this as well. This is an, I want to say Edson Soldapult. And this thing is really, really good. Now, if you've used solder suckers in the past, you know, it's the push down, pull the trigger, and it sucks the solder in type thing. And it hasn't been one of these. It's probably been kind of miserable. This one is actually really, really good. So first off, the tip is actually really high temp resistant. I will put this directly on the soldering iron tip as I'm utilizing it, but multiple other things make this thing great. It's super easy to open and service. So once it starts to get full of solder or clogged, you can take it apart. There is a rubber gasket on there and you can get a full service kit to make this thing reusable. So it actually has a future, unlike the cheap ones. And then it's actually pretty easy to use. So if I bring the ATX board back here, we'll try and remove this diode right there, which is something that's a little too chunky for my desoldering iron tip. I could get one that would work with it if I wanted to, but I probably won't bother because I'm going to keep it with smaller ones. So let me go ahead and give you a demonstration here. I'm just going to prime this, which is very easy to do. And the thumb trigger is on the side here, not on the top. That motion kind of sucks, the ones that do that. On the side, way easier to use. I'm going to go ahead and try and remove this diode here. And I've got the Metcal iron fired up here. There is a lot of solder around here, and the post on the diode is way too big for the tip on my desoldering gun, so I would actually use this in this use case. So I'm gonna get this flowing here, and this is one where actually I think I would want to put some leaded solder in here to make this flow a little better. Oh, that's big difference there. Go ahead and put some of that on the other side. Then I can come in here, get that warm, and I can put this right on the tip of the iron. This is a very high temp material on here, and go. That didn't quite, or did it get all of it? It's hard to tell. Needs a little more, so I can just actuate that nice and easy. Heat it up. This time I'm going to pull the iron back. There we are. Do the other side. There's a lot of solder on this board. And the diode, yep, there we are, nice and loose and hot. But this one works really, really well. I definitely recommend the Soldapult if you want a passive solder sucker. I really like using this one. Now I want to progress from soldering towards hand tools, and something kind of in the middle are tweezers, because you're going to use these to hold parts as you solder with them. But I want to specifically recommend cheap tweezers. Just get bare minimum garbage ones that are at least a minimal spring steel type thing, but I want you to bend them. Make a nice hand grip shape in them, and then customize the shape of the tip as you work. You can see mine are horribly warped, but I'm constantly bending and reshaping these tweezers so that I can get them to work exactly how I want for a project. And I highly recommend cheap tweezers for that reason, because you should just mess them up. Like, don't worry about it. Just get a pack of them, bunch of cheap tweezers. Highly recommended. Don't treat these as like something pristine. Now, one of the things I'm not going to be able to link here are the tools that I end up using to modify my tweezers, and that is this Home Depot Husky set of pliers. And the main reason I can't link to these are these, because they do offer a version of this that does not have these anymore. These are pretty basic, just small plier tools, but I really like them. There's not a whole lot to say about them. They do what they're supposed to. You got front clips, which are really nice. The painfully generic side snips, these have never failed me. I've probably abused them a lot. Like mini linesman pliers here that are both pliers and cutters in one. These I actually have a secondary use for that I'll show you in a moment. And then plain old flat pliers. So these are all really handy to have. And these are definitely one of those things that I keep nearby at all times when I'm working on projects. I'm always reaching for these. Now, the mini linesman pliers, let me show you something. Now, there are products 100% specifically sold for this exact use case. I've never picked one up. I probably should. But something that might be worth knowing, at least in a pinch here, is if you have grippy pliers like this, and I mean ones that have like little bits of teeth in there, one of my favorite things to do is keep a rubber band nearby and be able to put these along the back like that, and boom, you have a mini vise. So let's say you need to work on this really tiny PCB. I can just put this down, let it clamp on it, boom, stays in place. And if I really need to, I'll put something heavy on there. And there you go, mini vise. Again, I know they sell products specifically for this, and you're probably telling me helping hands like this. I don't like these. Don't like them. So I prefer that, which is dumb, I know, but that's what I end up using more. As I'm putting these away, I'll mention there is a modern version of this kit, but I think it's lacking these two tools in particular. And the reason I think that these don't really exist, this one maybe, but especially not this one, is because of how long the case has to be. These go really far up into the case, and actually you can't put these right there. They will protrude through the case. So I'm guessing they did it to, you know, harmonize the whole thing and make it easier to put together, because it's really nice that it comes in this little zip up case that I definitely totally remember to put these away back in every single time I use them. Definitely. Now I'll do one more Husky Home Depot brand tool here really quick. This one I also can't link to, and it is the box cutter I prefer. This is like a really weird thing, but this is a sliding mechanism. So it goes down and in, you press this button to release it, and it also includes blade storage in the handle. I've not found an equivalent of this for sale. I don't like folding. I don't like the possibility of the blade coming back down onto my fingers. That scares me a lot. So I prefer this. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I've got a thing for tools that are gravity fed. So if you press on that, boom, you can pop it open really quick and easy. I have one other tool that's like this that I can recommend, but I do recommend this if you somehow find one. I'm pretty sure you can't get one. I'll take a look again, but yeah, I don't think they're available. Now, the other tool that just pops open is daily carry for me. And I do use this when I'm working on stuff just because it's always right by. This is a Gerber portable plier thing, just multi-tool. And you press on these two sides and then the pliers portion actually slides out as opposed to it being a fold around for the handles. And that makes this way stronger. I have never had a problem where this thing is like folded up or anything because it's not physically possible. It's got all the types of bits you would think it would have in there, you know. That's nice. Those are generally just like a, you know, last minute type use case thing, but these are kind of my go-to like big pliers because they're always in my hands. Very much like these, and this, one of the most satisfying things ever. Back to more traditional hand tools though, I want to recommend these. These are Klein wire strippers. These are the, what are they, 26 to 16 size wire strippers. These are phenomenal. I don't know how to really sell you on these because every time I've ever said, hey, these are fantastic, I get people saying, ugh, gross, you like the alligator wire strippers? Yes, but only this exact one. These are still available in like 15 bucks, super cheap, for like a nice tool. I bought these 7 years ago. I used them a lot and they're still doing just fine. These are super quick and easy to use. So let's say I want to strip this wire, just pinch on there, boom, pull, done. Now the downside with these is that if you mess up like the wrong tooth selection, you'll end up stripping out bits of copper as you go along and you'll reduce the strands. So you got to make sure you actually size it correctly. But one of the reasons that I feel like these are so good has to do with wires that are too small for them. So this is some solid core Kynar wire that just slips right through the smallest size hole. But I can still strip these with this. If I get in there at the right angle, pinch it to the side and then twist, it will, actually if I do it right here, there we go, strip off the tip of the wire, and that becomes like this motion with the rotating that I am very familiar with these. And I use these a lot for every wire because of that. Wires that are too big, I can still do it. Wires that are too small, obviously I can do it. So yeah, these are my all-in-one wire stripping tool, always nearby, highly recommended. Something else I'm always searching for, and this feels kind of weird to say, is this. This is a Radio Shack like poker tool thing. Since it's Radio Shack, obviously gone. Now, I'm pretty sure I got this with like a $2 soldering iron or something, and it's even starting to fail. I think I can pull out, yeah, the bottom side. That shouldn't be possible. But this thing is unbelievably useful. So we have an insulated plastic handle. By insulated, I just mean thermally. A blade tip and a just sharp, pokey tip. I love this thing. I'm always searching for it for manipulating things, pointing to stuff, or try and scratch something just to get an idea of it. I use this so much. There are other poking tool sets that I've seen when I was researching stuff before recording this, and I might actually buy one of those because I like this thing so much. I'd be curious to see what a complete set of them would be like. So yeah, this is highly recommended. I'll link to the set of them down below. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the bent tip like this does, which I do actually prefer. But I don't know. I'm probably going to get that and find out what it's like. It's less than $10. So yeah, poking tool, highly recommended. All right. Next are two screwdriver options. One of them I'm sure you've heard a lot about, we'll get to in a moment, but the first one here, probably not so much because of its competitor. This is not an iFixit toolkit. This is instead a horrifically cheap, painfully generic one. I've used both an iFixit kit and this. Unfortunately, I lost my driver for the iFixit kit, so that's kind of set which one I use, but this has a cool feature the iFixit kit doesn't. The tip extends. Now, because you end up with this extremely narrow shaft on the driver, this can reach into places that other tools can't, and that's part of why I really like it. Combine this with an extension or something, instant Mac cracker for getting into Macs. Actually, I think you don't even need that. I think it's just long enough. These are really, really cheap. There's a whole bunch of them. There's nothing unique about this one. It comes with a bunch of bits. The bits are kind of garbage. I've actually broken one. So here is a chipped like flat blade bit. Yeah, that's not optimal. So that part sucks, but cheap. So yeah, I would like a higher quality version of this. If iFixit ever makes a driver with an extendable shaft like that, I will go back to them. Now the other screwdriver, which is the LTT screwdriver with the integrated bit storage and ratcheting mechanism. This is a really new tool to me, which it is to everyone. And I can already tell you it has instantly replaced all of the other tools that I'm using that are like this. Now, normally, what I've been using is this, again, Husky brand fixed bit driver set. I have always kept these nearby and would reach for them. And generally, I do recommend just having something like this nearby that's really handy. What I use is, you saw this next to my soldering iron base station. I have a little multi-hole tool that I slot these into, and then they're right there. I can just grab them and get to them. I still leave them there, but I've actually been using this more, and especially portably, because you have all the bits right there. It makes it really easy to take one tool out and have it do everything. So it's a really good proposition there. And I will say the whole feel, the ratchet mechanism, the bit storage, how the bits feel when they go in there, all feels pretty darn great. So it's really hard to fault anything with this when you keep it within the realm of what it's meant for. And even if you don't, I actually just assembled 5 bookshelves using this thing for the cam locks and things. And I thought, like, oh, I'm putting a lot of pressure on this thing. Nope, it just took it. So yeah, the LTT screwdriver, I do actually recommend. So I guess I'll be linking to lttstore.com in the description if you want to find this thing. It is, yeah, it's pretty darn good. Now, speaking of PC building stuff, another thing that I consider to be a tool that you may not is this. This is a power supply. I highly recommend having a power supply that is relatively new, kicking around, that you don't have dedicated to any other purpose, because they're like the #1 thing that always fails. So there is absolutely nothing special about this power supply. It's not even the one that actually goes in this box. This is a 700 watt modular Corsair, partially modular. It doesn't really matter. This thing has just been put into a bunch of different computers, and I have swapped it out over the years. So this used to be the 430M. But one thing I would recommend if you do this, which I very much highly recommend, is every now and then replace it with another one. And when you put a computer together that ended up having a bad power supply, put your test power supply in there instead. That way it actually goes into service, because generally you don't use it a whole lot and it's just sitting there. So you'll put some age on it, but then you can put it into use. That'll fix most of the aging if it's only a couple of years or months or something. So yeah. This is like the #1 diagnostic utility for hardware issues, I would say, when you are working on a slightly older computer, like let's say 10 years back. I use this a lot on 90s stuff. And by this, I just mean a power supply. Again, there's nothing special about this. Yeah, just generally a modern power supply. Get it a cheap one. It does not have to be nice. Then you might second guess putting it into a system, but you know, maybe get a quality brand, lower end one, you know, balance it out. But I highly recommend just having a power supply kicking around. Really one of the most useful diagnostic tools that you can have for older computers, because that is, again, what always fails. Unless it's caps. And in that case, I'm going to recommend this, but I'm not going to talk too much about it because I literally have a whole dedicated video about this thing. And it's actually one of my first videos, and still I feel like a pretty good one. So this is the DEE DE5000 LCR meter. This is a device specifically made for testing capacitors. So actually, for giggles, let's take one of those caps that was on that ATX power supply that I removed something from, And I'm gonna put this on here. So positive, positive, negative, negative. Set this to cap mode. Okay, get the ESR reading here. 10 ohms ESR, holy moly, that is a super duper dead capacitor. So yeah, visually, you can't tell there's anything wrong with that cap. It measures 186 nanofarads and it is probably a 1 mic cap. Yep. So on the surface, this thing looks okay if you just use capacitance measurement, but the ESR reading there, which is kind of the whole thing about one of these tells the tale, that is super duper dead. You don't want to use that thing. So yeah, having an ESR meter is very handy. This is a more expensive model. You can get a cheaper one. There are like these $5 kit versions. I have not tried those because this was one of those things where I just decided I want something nice so that I can actually trust the results and know what I'm doing. Because capacitors are kind of like little magic cylinders of who knows what's going on inside. So having something that definitely does know what's going on inside is really helpful. Now, related to that, I will go over my portable multimeter a little bit here. This is more just because I get questions about this, and I don't necessarily recommend you get one of these, mostly due to cost and performance. This is a Fluke 287. This is my go-to portable multimeter. This thing is ridiculously super duper overkill. This thing can log data, output it over a connection that is waterproof, I think. Has all sorts of features. It's kind of crazy, but for filming, it has a very nice, easy to see display that is backlit. It is very robust and it works super well. Has all the features I could ever want and more. It's kind of good, but it is really slow. So here we're doing continuity test. Hear that delay? I don't like that, which is why I also have my 34401A here. Let me just go ahead and power that really quick. Micro tool recommendation here. Binder clips on your workbench. I keep a binder clip here with extension cable and just ICC13 cable, and I can reach right over, grab it, and it's just there all the time on a binder clip, and I can pinch it and reposition it if I need. Yeah, mini recommendation. Continuity 34401A. Instant. But yeah, that's super quick versus incomparable. So that's part of why I wouldn't necessarily say this is just like the be all end all multimeter, because there are better ones out there, but portably and for having a complete feature set, I do like this. Technically, I think, no, you need the, this one, yeah, no, technically this can do capacitor measurements, but it's basically useless. I highly recommend getting something else, because this is very inaccurate from what I've done. It's probably made more for like air conditioners and like other large industrial equipment that have humongous caps in them and checking really rudimentary things. It's just the farads and not a whole lot more. So don't get that for capacitance measurement, thinking you're going to get the same kind of results as something like this. Capacitors do require a dedicated purpose device. Well, we are very close to done here. Those are the majority of the tools that I use on a regular basis, but there's one more thing I want to talk about, and it's actually kind of the reason I wanted to do this video. I was tempted to do a dedicated video about just it, but I figured it kind of wasn't really a strong enough concept on its own, but it is my Atrix ESD vacuum cleaner. Now, I showed this in, I forget which video, the keyboard video, something? I don't know. No, that alien computer case thing from Vision Man. Yeah, so this is an ESD vacuum cleaner. That means it is electrostatically safe, and we can actually see how and why. So let me demonstrate this here. If I take my Fluke multimeter here and I set it to a resistance measurement, one thing this vacuum cleaner has that almost no other vacuum cleaner would have is an electrically conductive tip. So I'm gonna go to the ground prong on here because this is a grounded vacuum cleaner. It's not 2-prong, it's 3-prong. And go to the very tip of the vacuum here. You'll see it is conductive. And that's because every single part of this is conductive. If we go from ground to the tip here, we can see we get 7 mega ohms through the hose. We get 12 mega ohms. And then from here to there, we'll get couple hundred mega ohms. This is only slightly ESD, but it is still conductive. And this comes with a few accessories here that go with it. And one of the really cool things is that these things are ESD too, including the brushes on this. We can see 43 kilo ohms there. That's kind of cool and actually made me learn something. That is guaranteed ESD safe because that's the whole purpose of this. But this is a cheapo ESD brush. You look up ESD brush on Amazon, you get that. This, not conductive. Now, there are 2 different kinds of ESD safe considerations. This is dissipative. It will not allow a charge to build and can slowly discharge through it. This might be safe in that it does not build up a charge. Now you'll see it does actually say it's ESD on it, but you know, you can put that on anything. It's just plastic molding. So I'm not totally sure about ESD brushes. I'm just, doesn't quite sit right with me, but this thing is phenomenal. Now this is a kind of weird thing to buy, and kind of specialty. The reason that I bought it is because in my office, I don't have a dedicated sink. It's actually a shared sink between multiple offices around here, and I cannot monopolize using it to clean something. So if I have something that's really dirty, I can't go wash it in a sink here. So I bought this so that I could dry clean things. And this just allows me to have a way of removing dirt and dust and debris without involving a fluid that I have no way of getting rid of, because I could bring water in here, but would have to pour it into like a reservoir or something. That would kind of suck. There are like portable parts cleaners for cars that have been recommended, but this really seems like the way to go to me, because you can get in there, you can brush, that's safe, and it'll just remove the stuff. Now, I will mention, this part kind of sucks about this thing. The filter for it, there's the grounded strap, by the way, is a canister that is sealed. So I have used it here, but you can't like open this and clean it. They like bond it somehow here. I have every intention of, when I feel like this thing is not working optimally anymore, of cutting this open and yoinking that sucker out to clean it. You can buy new filters. I bought the whole thing on Amazon. I don't think I can get these on Amazon, so that's, so I might order 1 or 2 extras from Atrix, but yeah, that part kind of sucks. But overall, I mean, it's a kind of cool concept and I really like it. So I do recommend it if it sounds like something that would be useful to you. It is the kind of thing where you're gonna know you need to use it before you buy it. If this sounds like the kind of thing like, oh, that would be perfect for this, it probably is. But if this doesn't immediately sound like something or like, oh, that would be perfect, you probably don't need it, because there are other ways, especially with wet cleaning, you know, using isopropanol to clean something drained down a sink. That's a really, really good cleaning solution that just is not an option for me here. So I need something like this to do bulk cleaning. I do have these. These are ethanol wipes for things like that, or removing solder flux or something. These are how I generally handle things that need a solvent. I don't necessarily recommend these. That's just the way that I'm working right now. Again, this is more about things that I actually like. I actually like the Atrix vacuum. I think that's a really cool concept. It's just something that you either need or you don't. Well, there we go. The tools that I most commonly reach for. And I do mean tools in a more general sense, because we didn't get into like tools for working with disk images, tools for capturing VGA, or definitely not the much more complicated engineering tools that I have up there. So there'll probably be more things like this in the future, but today I just needed a simple video, first off, with everything else going on that I mentioned, but also I kind of just wanted to get this out there and put out some of my opinions on things, like especially the solder pult is something where people go, ooh, a solder sucker, but no, seriously, it's actually really good. So there's some things that, you know, thought I would just share my opinions on so that I can point to them later and go, here's where you can find out more about that. But, you know, maybe it'll spark some ideas for some people. But that is it for now. So if you enjoyed this video, you may want to subscribe because I'll eventually do a video on that stuff. I'm just working out a larger setup for it that is all integrated. I have a GPIB to USB adapter. I'll leave it at that. If you want to help support the channel, you can buy a shirt like this or find me on Patreon. But for now, that's it, and I will see you next time.